Dzień dobry, witamy Państwa bardzo serdecznie.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We cordially welcome you from the headquarters of Grupa LOTOS. We would like to present you the consolidated financial results for Q1 2020. We are meeting for the second time only online. Of course, all of us and all of you would like this conference to be a little bit different, to allow us exchange opinions and answer your questions. I hope it will be possible in some time, and we are looking forward to this. Our presentation will be traditional. We will present you consolidated financial results. We are waiting for your questions, which you can send at our email address media@grupalotos.pl. We have collected some questions before, and we will try to answer your questions in the conference. We are observing all the rules, the sanitary regime. There is a limited number of people here. We keep the distance between us. So as you can see, we take care for the safety also. But it's important for us to give you actual information about the company. The conference will be hosted by Mr. Jarosław Kawula, Vice President for Refining and Marketing of Grupa LOTOS. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Wojciech Zenkteler, Head of Office for Investment Relations. Good morning. Mr. President, we can start. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, that's the next time when we meet in these circumstances and when we can answer all your questions which you are sending to us during the conference and after it. As it was mentioned by Mr. Kasprzyk, you can send the questions at media@grupalotos.pl. We would like to give you all the information needed. And now let's proceed to financial results for Q1 2020, but not only. We are aware of the fact that we have found ourselves in an unprecedented situation. There are global restrictions on economy functioning and society functioning. So that is why we decided to present you data on April 2020. This is the first whole month when all the restrictions introduced to the Polish market and to the neighbors' markets were introduced. Everybody remembers the restrictions introduced in China, in Southeastern Asia, then in Europe, as well as
in the United States. The epidemic began to spread and the restrictions were implemented, and in many countries around the world the restrictions are either partially or completely taken off. April 2020 and the data of April will allow you to assess better the impact of the coronavirus and the restrictions imposed by the authorities on the entire market and on our group. The results in the whole quarter, and we will be providing further results as we go. Let's begin with summarizing. It features the most important elements of the results. The quarterly EBITDA LIFO was 671 million, a 6% increase year over year, which was a very good result, higher than in the fourth quarter of 2019, which illustrates that we used January, February, and the first 2 weeks of March very well to be able to fight on the market for such a good result. In the second half of March, interestingly enough, even though the domestic restrictions were already in place and decreased the demand for fuel, because of our location in the Pomeranian region, and because we were able to optimize production and make it better all the time, we were able to work at full capacity, being able to export our product. So our group is in a very good situation. It is open to the world, and because of that, it has high flexibility in reacting to what is happening on the market. Nevertheless, taking into account that the assets have been overpriced, we reassessed by the end of March the pricing of our assets. When it comes to the crude oil and to fuel reserves, we needed to put the new pricing on these assets. So we needed to write off close to 800 million zloty in the balance sheet. Other write-offs have to do with our mining extraction assets. The prices fell precipitously on the assets that were produced on our deposits. So write-offs needed to be done, but these are accounting effects that have little to do with actual cash flow. So the net loss that is reported is not does not translate to the balance sheet or to our financial standing and liquidity. In the first quarter of 2020, we were able to complete a 3-day EFRA testing run. So we crossed all the T's. We reported before that on the 1st of December, the DCU part of the installation was already commissioned off for use. And from that time, it has been contributing to our financial results. Now we completed the project, proving that all the installations as part of EFRA meet all the required parameters when it comes to production capacity and when it comes to production structure and the quality of the products themselves. So the EFRA project has been completed, summarized, and commissioned off, and now we are consuming the good effects of that project as illustrated by our good results. The good results in production and in costs are allowing us to maintain our discipline when it comes to debt. The gearing ratio is 1 to 1. The net debt to LIFO to EBITDA is 1 to 1. Our management is assessing the situation of the company very well, and therefore it recommended to pay out a valuable dividend. We recommended that during the general meeting, we discuss the option of paying out 1 zloty per share, which gives us about 185 million zlotys in dividend. This is a dividend that is slightly lower than in 2019, but we are mindful of the fact that on the one hand, we feel that the financial standing of the company is very good, but on the other hand, we still have many question marks ahead of us. We don't know what the full impact of the COVID-19 is going to be on the market and on the potential index in the economy, either domestically, locally, or globally. So therefore, we decided to limit to some extent the dividend this year. But we also have to remember that we need to incur more investment in the coming year. We before decided to become part of the project of Polymer Police. So we are putting aside some funding to be able to participate in that project. And the final element has to do with using our production capacity. We are optimizing our production structure so we can work at full capacity.
Przejdźmy do kolejnego slajdu. Tutaj mamy podsumowanie pierwszego kwartału na liczbach tych najważniejszych.
The fourth quarter on the most important number. I already said that the we had a 6% increase compared to the first quarter of 2019. The debt ratio is 1:1.
On the safe level, I would like to remind you that in the strategy we assumed that this level wouldn't be higher than 1.5. So in terms of debt, we are on the safe level. Crude oil throughput in Gdańsk, it's 2.6 million. In Q1 2020, it's very similar to Q1 in 2019. Daily hydrocarbons production, the production increased thanks to launching the Utgard deposits. You can see the higher production in Q1 2020 than it was in the same period last year. Let's have a look at the next slide, macroeconomic environment. This is the element which determines the results of Grupa LOTOS the most, especially when we talk about write-downs which were mentioned. Let's have a look at the quotations of crude oil and natural gas. Data for the first quarter are not so bad because it was $51 in Q1. It means a 20% decrease in relation to the strategy, but our reserves were estimated with the price of the 31st of March, not the average price of Q1. And as you can see, this average is significantly higher than the average of April. It reflects the quotation of the end of March. That is why you can see the significant reduction of prices of our reserves and assets. I would like to remind you that these are not cash effects. They don't affect our liquidity condition, but these are only accounting operations. The next element of macroeconomic environment, which is very important, are the product crack spreads. It means this is the difference between product price and oil cost. Here you can see the influence of factors related to coronavirus pandemic. Movement restrictions on transportation using services, concentrated mainly on gasoline demand, because usually people globally use gasoline to their cars. Hence, the average result of Q1 2020 was significantly lower than we assumed in the strategy. And in April, the crack spread was even lower than the average for Q1. You can see that it hasn't influenced so much diesel, because diesel is driving force of the economy. Heavy transport is very crucial for the economy. It uses diesel as a fuel. So the crack spread here for Q1 2020 was quite good. Have a look at data on April. The result is very good, $126 per ton of diesel. Here you can see the effect of modernization of refinery in Gdańsk and EFRA project. The diesel share in production is one of the highest in the world, and that is why the macroeconomic structure is very beneficial for Grupa LOTOS, unlike many other refineries in the world. Interestingly, you can see the increase of crack spreads for heavy fuel oil. We have expected that the year 2020 will be the year when heavy fuel oil will have a low price due to the rules on quality requirements for marine fuels. Reality was whatsoever different. Here you can see that the market is very flexible. It can adjust to legislative situation. Heavy fuel oil found new markets, new uses, and in the first quarter of 2020 was sold at good prices. The April result is minus 24. It's a record-breaking result in terms of heavy fuel oil. It can be commented like that. Here, the difference of quotations of fuel oil and crude oil is not as important as its nominal price. When the crude oil was quoted on $18 per barrel, heavy fuel oil becomes one of the cheapest energy sources. So these energy sources, which are flexible in terms of fuels, start using heavy fuel oil. We can call it the bottom price for this product. And it also becomes a substitute for coal. Let's proceed. These are macro data for exchange rates. Our business, the refining business, is functioning in US dollar, so we need to convert it into Polish zloty. High rate of US dollars favors the high results, especially you can see it in April 2020. US dollars is very expensive, but the result of first quarter 2020, 3.92, is very similar to the previous results. The most information about the market you can get when you look at the trends on fuels consumption. Data for Q1 2020 are the same as Q1 2019. It means that the market had the same average volume in the first quarter. But if we have a look at this through months, like in January, February, and first half of March, there was an increase of gasoline demand. But then the demand was decreased in the second half of March. So that is why it influenced the average first quarter results, and it was stable in relation to Q1 2019. The last thing which I would like to comment on is Polish GDP growth. You can see the trend which shows us that the GDP growth is slowing down. Next slide presents once again data on crude oil and product crack spreads. I wouldn't comment on that because I have done this before. So I would like us to proceed the financial results on exploration and production segment. I would like to give the floor to Wojciech Zenkteler, the head of Office for Investment Relations.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the exploration and production, the upstream segment, is beginning to create value. We are starting at slide 11 that shows you a picture showing where we produce and how big the reserves are. On the left-hand side, you see B coming from the Baltic Sea, shows our domestic extraction that we have been implementing as part of the Polish part of the mining and extraction business side. The B8 production is slowly getting to the assumed levels. Right now, those deposits are going over the project of using the deposit to its full capacity. We have not reached that threshold yet, but we are coming we're getting there. When it comes to B3, the production level is fairly low, and most likely for some time it will stay low. We have already began something that we announced before, using the new oil rig that we purchased from Merckx. We are now reconstructing the drilling structures, drilling wells at B3. We are now working on 2 wells. So the negative trend that put us at a very low position is soon to be reversed. When it comes to the middle part of the slide, the Heimdall, the part that is the driving force of our mining and extraction, please look at the bottom of that box and you will see the lifting costs. These are single-digit figures in Norway, even though the macroeconomics circumstances are so severe. We have been able to keep this business up and running on this level. Please look at the upper right-hand corner. You'll see Odgaard. Its contribution is quite good in this part of the financial standing. The Odgaard is delivering and it's very cost effective. We increased the production at that deposit. We were able to lower our average cost and become more effective, even though the whole production and exploration and production segment is in trouble. And when we look to turn to slide 12, we can look at the volumes. Please look at the upper right-hand corner. Look at the graph. You will see the quarter-to-quarter sales figures are maintained on the same level, but there is a slightly higher figure when it comes to Norway. That's because of Odgaard, and it makes the structure of our sales volume, the structure divided, broken down into crude oil and gas is moving to something that is desirable to us. We are aiming to have more, relatively speaking, more crude oil and less gas, natural gas. But I'd like to mention that when it comes to the current situation, natural gas delivers a benefit in the form that even when the price is lowering, we can process crude oil, and therefore we have lower downstream production costs. Let's turn over to page 13. That's the reserves quarterly. We are comparing to the end of 2019. Therefore, the bars in the middle are not as big as we thought, but it shows that our reserve pool is quite stable, and today the exploration and production is not doing that well, but when the macroeconomic situation is on the rebound, we will have a lot of potential for making more profit. And let's go to page 14. Let's look at the results from Q1. As President Kavula already mentioned, because of the high overpricing of the quotation of crude oil and natural gas, we were forced to test for the loss of value in our exploration deposits, and we needed to include the 209 million write-off, but that was only for accounting purposes, and it was accounting in nature. It wasn't cash flow, and it doesn't really impact our commercial potential for generating business. Our result is not more than 10% under what we saw last year, even though the quotation is such low. And that's it for refining and marketing. Let's get back to exploration and production. I'm going to turn it over to President Kavula. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about refining and marketing. Let's look at the next slide. we see the
Zarówno w pierwszym
structure of
kwartale roku
the
2020,
products
jak i
in
w
the first
piątym
quarter of
2021. Tutaj
2020 and
na co
in
chciałbym zwrócić
April
Państwa uwagę? Przede
2020.
wszystkim
What
widać
is
wpływ
notable here? First of all, we
uruchomienia
see the
projektu
impact
EFRA.
of
Spójrzmy
launching the
na
EFRA project
produkcję
that
koksu
has been
naftowego.
completed. Let's look
Oczywiście
at
ona
the
się pojawia w czwartym
post-petroleum
kwartale roku
coke.
2019
It already
i
showed up in the
pierwszy
fourth
kwartał roku
quarter of
2020
2019, and
pokazuje,
the
że ta
first
struktura,
quarter of
czyli ilość koksu
2020
naftowego
shows that
wytworzonego
the
w strukturze
petroleum
produktów jest nieco
coke
większa
produced
niż była w czwartym
is
kwartale.
higher than
To
it was in
oczywiście
the fourth
przekłada się na
quarter of
zmniejszenie
last year,
produkcji produktów ciężkich.
which translates to
I
the
to
decrease in
drastyczne
production of
zmniejszenie,
heavy
zmniejszenie o połowę,
fractions by
które to
50%. The change
zamieniają
is
się
quite big,
głównie w olej
and
napędowy.
that in turn
Jeżeli chodzi
translates
o
to the
produkty,
situation
czyli
on
tak zwane
diesel
frakcje
oil.
średnie, to z udziałem
When
na
it comes
poziomie
to middle
60%
fractions,
w
we
strukturze
see
produkcji, tak
the
jak powiedziałem na początku, jesteśmy jedną
60% contribution
z
in
tych rafinerii na
production,
świecie,
which
które
puts
mają
us
najlepiej
in among
w
those
kierunku średnich
refineries around the
dystylatów
world that
ułożoną
are doing
konfigurację. W
very
tego
well
typu
when it
sytuacjach,
comes
jak
to
ma miejsce
configuring
teraz,
those
kiedy
middle distillates.
to olej napędowy jest tą
Considering
siłą
the
napędową
situation
gospodarki,
now when
która
the
pozwala
diesel is the driving
kontynuować
force of the
dostarczanie
economy that makes it
produktów
possible
do
to
sklepów,
continue
do
delivering
firm,
products to stores
surowców, stanowi właśnie
so
ten
that
krwiobieg
company
gospodarki.
do
Nasza
their
struktura
business.
wytworzenia
That
produktów
is the
naftowych idealnie
blood of the
wpisuje się
economy. Our
w to
structure of
zapotrzebowanie.
the production of
Co jeszcze
those
istotne,
assets
biorąc pod
is
uwagę
very well
istotne zmiany
fitting with
dotyczące popytu
the
na
demand.
niektóre produkty,
What else is
w
important?
szczególności
When we
możemy
look at the
powiedzieć o
change
paliwie
in the
lotniczym.
demand for some of the product, let's talk
Doskonale
about
zdajemy
jet
sobie
fuel,
sprawę
for
z tego, że
example.
popyt
We
na paliwo
are
lotnicze
mindful of the
został
fact that the
zredukowany
demand for
prawie
jet
do zera.
fuel has been reduced
I
close
dzięki
to zero
działaniom zarówno po stronie technologicznej, jak i po stronie handlowej
because both the commercial and
praktycznie
technological side has
zredukowaliśmy produkcję paliwa
taken
lotniczego
up
w
a
tym
lot
okresie
of
takim
effort. We
najgorętszym do zera.
reduced the
Dzięki
production
temu
of jet fuel
możemy
nearly
kontynuować
to zero
przerób ropy
because of the
na
falling
w zasadzie
demand. And because of
maksymalnym
that, we can
poziomie,
focus
pomimo
on
tego, że rynek
processing crude
produktów
oil
naftowych
at
tak
maximum
istotnie, tak
capacity,
drastycznie się zmienił.
even though
To
the
jest dowód
market
na to,
has
że
undergone such a dramatic
nadmorskie
change.
położenie
It is
rafinerii
proof of the fact
i
that
taka
the
doskonałość operacyjna,
location
która
of the refinery
przekłada się
next to
na
the sea and
elastyczne
the
dostosowywanie struktury
refining
produkcji
capacity
do
and perfection
zapotrzebowania
that
rynku,
allows us to
jest tą
change
siłą
the
grupy
production
LOTOS, która
structure to meet
jest
the demand of the market is the
powodem
driving force of our
naszej
whole
bardzo
group
dobrej kondycji
and
w
is
tej
reason
sytuacji.
for our very
Przejdźmy
good financial
do
standing
kolejnego
in the current
slajdu
circumstances.
prezentującego
Let's move
wyniki
on to the
segmentu.
next slide
Wcześniej
showing
wspominałem o tych
the
odpisach
results of the sector. Before I talked
wynikających
about
z
the
przeceny
write-offs
wartości
that
naszych
have to do
zapasów.
with the overpricing of
No
our
to jest konsekwencja oczywiście z
reserves,
jednej strony
that comes
przepisów
as a
dotyczących zapasów
consequence, on the one hand,
obowiązkowych.
of the
Wszystkie
regulations on
podmioty
mandatory
działające na rynku
reserves.
muszą
All
przechowywać
economic
zapasy po to, żeby
operators on
na wypadek
the
sytuacji
market in this
kryzysowej móc
sector have
utrzymać
to keep reserves. So if the
dostarczanie tych
crisis
produktów na
comes,
rynek. To z kolei
there
wpływa
are
na
products delivered to the
wyniki
market.
finansowe
It
podmiotów
has
działających
impact
na
on
rynku
our
polskim
financial results
w
and the
sytuacjach
financial results of
drastycznych zmian
many
notowań
economic
produktów
operators of
naftowych.
the market.
W tej sytuacji
In the
wpłynęło to
situation when
negatywnie
a product
ze względu na to, że notowania produktów i ropy
prices
naftowej się
are
zmniejszyły,
quotations are lower,
ale jeszcze raz chciałbym podkreślić, że jest to wpływ
it bore a
księgowy,
negative impact
który
on
nie ma
the results
przełożenia
that we
na
see. But again, I'd
bieżącą
like to
sytuację
reiterate that this
finansową
is
Grupy
only
LOTOS.
in accounting and it doesn't have any impact
491
on the actual
milionów EBITDA
situation
LIFO
of
w
our
pierwszym kwartale roku
standing.
2020, to wynik o
940,
13% wyższy
900,
niż w pierwszym kwartale roku
491 million.
2019.
That's 13%
Kolejny
better than in
slajd
the last quarter of 2019.
prezentuje już skonsolidowane wyniki finansowe. Na
Following
prezentację
slides
tej części
presents
przekazuję
consolidated
głos
results, and
Wojciechowi
this
Zengtelowi.
will be
Dziękuję
talked
bardzo.
about by Wojciech
Bardzo
Zengteler.
dziękuję, panie prezesie. Na koniec klamra
Thank you very
stwierdzająca to,
much.
co właściwie zostało powiedziane, więc bez może
Now I'd like to
powtarzania
conclude
pełnych
what has already
szczegółów,
been said without
jeden
repeating
parametr,
the
którego
details
państwo nie
too
widzieliście
much.
wcześniej, to jest
The
strata
one
netto
parameter that you did not
w
see
tym
before
kwartale
is
dosyć
the
wysoka. Strata netto
net
jest tylko
loss in this
papierowa,
quarter. It is quite
prawie
high,
wyjątkowo
but it's only on
dość
paper.
negatywnie, pod negatywnym wpływem wyceny rynkowej transakcji
It is
zabezpieczających
due to the negative assessment market-wise of the whole structure. And it also has to do with the dollar appreciating. We are taking precautions, though. We are making sure that our transactions for the purchase of the CO2 emission is good. The price fell, and that's good for our financial standing. Although it doesn't reflect well in the finances. A word of commentary, maybe when you look at the negative figures, you are raising eyebrows, but the results are inevitable, like President Coppola said. When we look at the past, we have not seen in modern times such a decrease in quotation of Brent oil. A similar situation in the fourth quarter of 2014, a lease of this same nature was close to 40%. And then it was also illustrated in the financial results, but the operational flows were very good at the end of the year, very close to the results of clean EBITDA. Taking things further, the parameters, when we look at the parameters, the real parameters and not the accounting ones, the operational flow are on a very good level, maybe not perfectly aligned with the clean EBITDA, but still on a very good level. The reason for that being that when the quotation of fall, the effect on operational capital short term is oftentimes negative, and that's why we were hit in a sense, but that's only temporary. Let's turn over to slide 21. We see here our debt indexes. The net debt is on the rise, but when you look at the left-hand side, you see the dollar to zloty ratio. You understand that because of the scope of our business, we are incurring liabilities in dollars. And when the dollar appreciates, we need to reassess our accounting, and it is reflected in the indexes that you see. Even though the dollar is very strong compared to the zloty, now looking at the past, our key indicator and net debt to LIFO index is on a very good level. Our strategic goal of 1.5 was defined at the point of time when we didn't have impact or influence on that had to do with the increased leasing liabilities that was entered into the accounts later. So if we were to compare not apples to oranges, but apples to apples, 1.5 is on the level of actually 0.7. 0.5 is fairly stable. The company is very well prepared for the crisis situation, and you can see that in all the parameters presented. Thank you very much, and I'd like to turn it over to President Kasprzak.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Wojciech. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for questions of journalists. We were waiting for them during the conference. We have collected them also before. We adopted a rule that if there were more questions from the same editorial office, I will ask them one after another. We have a question from Mr. Piotr Panowicz. Welcome you online. We have always met together on our conferences. We could talk to each other So thank you that you are here with us. Then this is the first question. Will the pandemic of coronavirus affect the capex in Q2 2020 and the whole year 2020? And how, if so? And what will be the expected capex in these periods? Dear editor, ladies and gentlemen, we have found ourselves in an unprecedented situation. Coronavirus made us experience perturbations which we haven't experienced before. We reported that in the actual report. Our subcontractor of the IME project on Norwegian shelf claimed for force majeure. It means that the rig which is being reconstructed wouldn't be put into operation within the due time. So we expect that some of the capex which we planned on the level of 1.4 billion zloty wouldn't be realized due to the circumstances, due to the situation that we don't have contractors, subcontractors available, and due to the fact that our partners wait to make any decisions so as they could wait the most difficult times. We are estimating that the capex wouldn't be realized in 25%. It's quite a pessimistic forecast. It could be better. Thank you very much. And the next question from Mr. Panovich. The same question in relation to the throughput of oil. What production capacity do you expect in Q2 2020? Dear editor, I have mentioned a few times in this presentation that we are flexible and we can adjust to the market. This way of activity let us react to the changes on the market. Thanks to that, we use the maximum capacity of the refinery in April, which was the most turbulent time in the world. Everybody knows that since the 4th of May, some restrictions on using services and transportations have been being lifted. We can see that the demand and sale on gasoline is increasing. So the market is changing in a positive way since April. Estimating the capacity of the refinery, I would say that in Q2 2020 it will be similar to maximum. And the third question from Mr. Panovich. Can the period of exceptionally low quotations of crude oil translate to extending the portfolio of production assets of Lotos Group? In which regions in the world? On the other hand, will the pandemic of coronavirus delay pending developments projects in different way that it's been already reported? I think that I have answered the second part of the question when I answered the first question. We can see that some projects will be delayed, especially the IME project. We also reported that B4 and B6 projects will gain the investment decision on the threshold of 2020 and 2021. But in terms of extending the portfolio of production assets, I will tell you honestly that we are considering new options for upstream segment. One of them is the extending the portfolio, but now it's too early to give you specific data when we talk about the level as well as the directions in which we would like to get new assets. Thank you, that's all. Thank you very much. These are all the questions which we have collected. It doesn't mean that we aren't waiting for your questions. After the conference, you can ask us other questions. We can give you all the information. I would like to remind you the email address media@grupalotos.pl. We would like to answer all your questions. We are aware that such a conference is not perfect, that we can't answer all of your questions which you would like to ask us face to face, but we hope that this is one of the last conferences which are conducted in this way. We would like to guarantee that if the rules allow us, we will get back to traditional open press conference. We are looking forward to it. Once again, thank you very much for the meeting, and thank you to Jarosław Kawula, Vice President for Refining and Marketing of Grupa LOTOS. And I would like to thank Wojciech Zengteler, Head of Office for Investment Relations in Grupa LOTOS. Thank you very much, Adam Kasprzak, Director for Communication. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.